True Crime Society podcast contains adult themes and violence and is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. And if you'd like to skip the intro or move to any specific part of the podcast, please refer to the timestamps listed in the episode description. Thank you. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the True Crime Society podcast with Stephanie and Olivia. And Peep is here in my lap. She's always here for the intro. We just did the Patreon, and she was here for the intro. Then she left, came right back at the very end, ready for this intro. So she has to make her appearance before she goes about her daily activities.
Knows when she's needed.
Yes. It is January 15th, 2025 for reference. The weather here, still freezing. It's like a little warmer than it was, but still very cold. And next week there is another polar vortex Arctic air coming, so the temperature is going to be in the single digits, which is horrible.
It's we had a big, probably our first storm of the summer here. So we get a lot of often summer storms because it gets so hot and then it storms in the night. So we had one yesterday. It's still raining today. It's super windy. It's a lot cooler. So I don't know how long that will last, but it's been so humid. I think we're at 90% humidity here. And it's at the point now where I can't even have covers in the bed at night. I wake up at 3 and I'm cold, but only because it's too hot to have anything on, any covers on before that time until it cools down a little bit and isn't as
I feel like
wet.
I always need a cover. Even if I'm really hot, I need at least a sheet. I can't just sleep out in the open.
I'm usually like that, but just the last few days have been so humid. I'm like, no, I just can't do it.
I don't know what it is. It feels safer maybe
to have
unprotected covering. Yeah, this thin sheet, this thin tissue is protecting me.
It's like when you stick your leg out of the bed, you're like, no, don't do that. That's not safe.
I love sticking out a foot when I'm hot though. You just poke your little foot out and you're like, so much better.
Or turning your pillow over and the other side's nice and cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big change in the weather. It's been sunny, hot. I went for a walk yesterday and I pushed myself and walked probably about double the length I usually walk. And when I got halfway and had to turn around and come home, I'm like, this was a really big mistake because it's so hot. It's so humid. Why did I do this? But anyway, I made it. It was all fine.
I miss walking outside. Mike got me a walking pad that I've been using, but it's fine and it's good. And I wanted one. But walking outside is just so much better to get fresh air and you actually feel like you're going places, have things to look at.
Not as
it's too
boring.
cold. Yeah. I don't really have anything exciting to talk about. I have nothing going on. Life is boring. January is a boring month because it's just so cold. You don't even want to do anything still. Post holidays, I have no money, so don't want to go out.
We're also in the no money here, but usually it's interesting because it's totally different here. This is our January is your July, basically, your peak summertime. Everything's happening. There's a lot of tennis going on. The Australian Open's on. Everyone's into that. All the summer sports. It's flying by. The kids that go back to school in early Feb, so we're more than probably 2/3 of the way through summer break, so it's flying by.
I think I've talked about on here the plant I've been trying to save, or on Patreon, I don't know, but I have a tropical plant that I have in here that it was doing great all summer. Obviously now it's winter. I brought it inside and it's struggling a bit because the air is so much drier in here, and since it's tropical, it likes humidity. And I know I need to buy a humidifier, but I'm just being lazy about it. So I've been misting the plant with a spray bottle, and it's still okay. It looks a little shitty, but I'm still hoping I can make it a few more months before I can get it back outside. But so we moved the computer desk and computer used to be in a different place, and we moved it into our living room, and of course right next to the plant. And I have the plant on a pedestal because one of my first concerns was my cats will eat this plant. So I put it high up where they couldn't reach it. But now at the desk, Peep has discovered that she can reach the plant now. And I think at the end of, I don't know if it was the regular episodes or the Patreon episodes, I had to rip her out of the plant because she got into literally into the pot from the desk. So I noticed one of the leaves on the plant has a bunch of little nibbles on it. And I looked, and the plant, it's not like poisonous to cats, but it's like a little toxic where it'll hurt their tummies. So Miss Peep today threw up all over the floor a bunch of green
Oh.
leaves, like a biatch. So I have moved the plant away from the desk because someone is a monster.
A plant-eating monster.
She's just the worst. She's a menace. I don't know if I talked about on here either. I had another little plant that my neighbor gave me. It was like a spider plant, and I was trying to grow it. I had it in a little pot. I had it on the kitchen counter, and every day I would come into the kitchen and it'd be ripped out of the dirt. And I was like, who is doing this? And I was actually thinking it was my other cat. So I'd put it back in the dirt. It'd like grow for a few more days, get a little better. And then I'd come back in the kitchen and be ripped out of the dirt. And then I finally caught Peep on the counter one day, ripping it out of the dirt. I don't know what it is. So that plant didn't make it. Life with cats and plants is tough.
Yeah.
You can only have one or the other, apparently.
Donnie, like I always talk about Donnie because, like, I feel like Daisy is the smart one. She just doesn't really do much wrong. She just
well, it's like I
keeps to
never talk about
herself.
Fresh Butt, really.
Yeah. Whereas Donnie is the dumb one. He like gets in. Like, there's been times where he'll get into the garbage bin and like eat rubbish. And I'm like, you're an idiot. What is wrong with you?
It's just they're nuisances. But yeah, Fresh Butt, he's just like well behaved, nice, so I don't talk about him as much. Peep is just trouble.
Yeah. I think there's always one good one angel child, one devil child.
Yeah. Peep is definitely the devil. But she's cute.
Makes up for it.
Kind of.
So before we get into today's story, this episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack sponsor. I feel like we speak about IQ Bar a lot. They really, really, really are one of my favorite snacks. I've got my ultimate sampler pack, which I keep one at work. I keep one in the car. It's my go-to on-the-go snack because it satisfies my hunger with no sugar crash. They're easy to put anywhere you need to. You can take it to the gym. As I said, I keep one at work. So I've got my bars, my IQ Joe, my IQ mixers. Just depending what I want during the day, I've got it right on hand. So easy to carry around with you wherever you go. So start the new year off right with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixers, and mushroom coffees. The ultimate sampler pack includes all three. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our podcast listeners an exclusive deal, 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus you get free shipping.
We always talk about the IQ bars, which we do love, but the IQ mixes, they are a zero sugar drink mix that hydrates with electrolytes, improves mood with magnesium, and boosts clarity with lion's mane adaptogen. It's like you add it to your water because I'm trying to drink more water, but water is so boring and lame. But when I add a little bit of the IQ mix, some flavor, adds a little bit more excitement to it, then I'm a little bit more willing to hydrate.
My favorite IQ mix is blueberry pomegranate. I love it. It's so delicious. It just, like, I drink so much water during the day. When I add an IQ mix to it, it's delicious. Love it.
That's my favorite one too. I like the peach mango also. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus get free shipping. To get your 20% off, just text CRIME to 64,000. Text CRIME to 64,000. That's CRIME to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. And Peep just up and left. See, she knows. She knows when the intro's over. She's like, all right, I supervised enough here. So today we're going to be talking about a case that is a little bit older. I'm actually surprised we haven't done it before because it's kind of always been on our radar. It's the murders of Lyric Cook Morrissey and Elizabeth Collins. A lot of people just call them Lyric and Elizabeth. They were anyways, kind of compared to Delphi, Libby, and Abby a lot. There's some similarities between. People always wondered if they could have been connected. I mean, it seems like they're not at this point, but that's why it was kind of always on our radar because it was brought up a lot with the Delphi case, which we both followed closely. And this case was actually suggested to us via email from Dejana. So thank you for sending it in because this is a very interesting case that we just kind of kind of not forgot, but we just never were like, "Oh, let's do an episode on it," for some reason.
Even though it's older, like now it's 14 years old, there has been movement in the case throughout the years, like things still happening, and it's still unsolved, which is pretty
Mhm.
mind-blowing in this day and age of DNA and, CCTV and all that. Still unsolved, no arrests, even not many persons of interest named. So a very still mysterious
Mysterious.
case that doesn't seem to have any resolution coming anytime soon, unfortunately, for the families.
No, and there's still a lot of mystery surrounding it to an extent because it's one of those ones where they haven't released the cause of death and stuff
Yeah.
like that to try to keep some information private in case there's false confessions. So it's like we all still wonder what actually happened to them. So if you're not familiar, Lyra Cook Morrissey was 10 years old. She went missing with her cousin, Elizabeth Collins, who was 8 years old, in Evansdale, Iowa on July 13th, 2012. Their bodies were found in December that year, and now, more than 12 years later, their murder remains unsolved.
It's the mystery that's turning the tiny town of Evansdale, Iowa, upside down.
The more time and things that go by, the more thoughts that go through your head, and the worse the pit in your stomach gets.
8-year-old Elizabeth Collins and her 10-year-old cousin Lyric Cook vanished after leaving for a bike ride Friday, seemingly without a trace. The only clue, their 2 bicycles found at the edge of this local lake. That was 5 days ago, and so far, no break in the case.
So here we go. Hopefully we'll find something.
Today, even the mayor, Chad Deutsch, flew his own twin-engine plane over the search area in hopes of spotting any evidence that could help investigators.
Here, what are you looking for with your eyes?
Just anything out of place, any, colors, maybe there would be some clothing or something like that.
On the ground, 6 long days of frantic searching by hundreds of volunteers and police investigations have turned up nothing. And Misty Morrissey, mother of 10-year-old Lyric Cook, is losing patience.
We are still stuck with a lack of evidence and no girls, and who wants to go weeks, not knowing where their children are.
And so here, there's a sense that investigators are truly working against the clock. The family says the girl's grandmother was sitting for them last Friday when shortly after 12 noon, they went on a bike ride around the neighborhood.
They asked me to go for a short bike ride, and they just never came back.
So Lyric was born on October 2001, to her parents Misty Cook and Dan Morrissey. Lyric also had a brother named Dylan. Her childhood wasn't the easiest. When Misty, her mother, was 8 months pregnant, she was arrested on drug charges. She was jailed, and Lyric was raised by one of her aunts until she was 4 years old. Lyric's father, Dan, also has a criminal history, which we'll get into a bit later, but he was involved with methamphetamine and things like that. Lyric attended Kingsley Elementary School, and according to family members, she loved being outdoors and she enjoyed going fishing with her dad. She loved sledding and playing cards with her grandmother, and she loved performing dance routines with her cousins. Elizabeth June Marie Collins was born on July 31st, 2003, to her parents Drew and Heather Collins, and she was one of 4 children. And Heather is Misty's sister, so that's what makes Elizabeth and Lyric cousins. At the time of her murder, she was a student at Poynter Elementary School. Her family said that Elizabeth loved girly things like getting her nails and hair done. She loved singing, riding her bike, and enjoyed softball and hockey. Elizabeth loved spending time with her mother. They enjoyed shopping and having dinner together. So the girls vanished on Friday, July 13th, 2012, and they were last seen in Evansdale, Iowa, which has a population of around 4,500 people. According to crimegrade.org, Evansdale scores a C+, which means that is about the same as the average of U.S. cities. Evansdale is in the 51st percentile for safety, meaning 49% of cities are safer and 51% of the cities are more dangerous. So pretty much right in the middle.
Yeah, like you don't really hear much about it. It seems like quite a small town,
Mm-hmm.
basically average on the crime scale. Doesn't seem particularly, like some places you're like, well, this is quite a shady place. Just seems like an average-ish town.
Yeah, but you're also not like, it's the safest place ever.
No.
It's just average. So that day, the girls were dropped off at their grandmother's. Her name is Wilma Collins, and she was watching the children while their parents were at work since it was summer break from school. Misty, who's Lyric's mother, she just started a new job at a convenience store, and Wilma allowed the girls to go out and ride their bikes that day. Callie, who's Elizabeth's younger sister, was 4 years old at the time, and she said that she remembered asking if she could go ride bikes too. This is a quote. She said, I said, "But can I go?" And she said, "No, because grandma's not going to come with." So she wasn't allowed to go basically because she was too young and the girls are going out on their own, it seems.
Such a fateful decision. Like, obviously, a 4-year-old out riding a bike with an 8 and 10-year-old, I would not allow that either. But,
Mhm.
like, imagine if she had have gone, it could have very easily have been a different outcome for her too.
I also wonder on the flip side, if she had gone, would
Yeah,
the
maybe
attacker been like, okay, I can't
too
handle all
many.
three of
Yeah.
them? I don't know. You'll never know, I guess. So the girls are seen around 12:23 p.m. on Broven Boulevard and again between 12:30 and 1 p.m. on Gilbert Drive, which is near Myers Lake, and that is a popular recreation area. It looks like a lake with fountains, some little
Yeah.
docks.
There's a video on the blog I've put of someone, I think they went out with their drone around the area. Like, there's, like, some statues. Like, it's basically looks like a very well-kept, probably busy place where people go to run, walk,
Probably
bike
walk
ride.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, it's not like it's very secluded. It looks quite open. Like, there are some woods in the background, but it looks like, anyway, what you would think would be a very, very well-known recreation area in the town.
Yeah, like I'd imagine there's like picnic tables, people
Yeah.
could sit, benches, you could eat your lunch, walk your dog, that type of place. So when the girls didn't return home as planned, Wilma called the girls' parents and the police were notified at 2:48 that day, which is around 2.5 hours after they were last seen. Police began their search very quickly. By 2:50 p.m., 3 squad cars were searching the area. So that's like very, very fast. But you have to remember that Evansdale seems like it's a very small town. It seems like neither everyone, all the law enforcement, they weren't doing too much. So they were like, let's all go.
I tried to see if I could find any stats on how big the police department there actually is. I couldn't find anything that confirmed how many employees and things like that they had, but I feel like that was probably a large portion of their law enforcement unit was the 3 cars.
Yeah. So then by 3:15 p.m., neighboring towns sent their law enforcement to go help the search as well. So pretty quickly, I mean, once police were alerted, it seemed like there was a big search right away. But again, it'd already been 2.5 hours, which isn't that long, but for someone to snatch 2 girls and do whatever with them, it was more than enough time, it seems. So at 4 p.m. that day, the girls' bikes were found at the edge of Myers Lake, and Elizabeth's purse and cell phone were found discarded in a bush nearby. By 4:30 p.m., the girls were entered into the National Crime Information Center, which is the national FBI database. At that time, the fire department began dragging Myers Lake looking for any trace of the girls.
I feel like this is a super fast response. Like 2 hours after they're dragging the lake, I guess, that was where they were last seen. So your first thought would be, well, they've gone into the lake. Like, I understand why they did that, but it is a very, very quick response to mobilize everyone to get the lake dragged. 2 hours, it's quick.
Yeah, I feel like they were kind of like, we got to rule this out quickly
Yeah.
because then it's more likely that if they're not in the lake, then what happened? Automated messages were sent to residents in the area at 4:40 p.m. asking anyone with information to come forward. The media was notified of the girls' disappearance at 5:30 p.m. and divers began searching the lake around this time.
Hundreds of volunteers
Everyone's motivated to bring them home.
lining up to help
It could have been my kids, could have been anybody's.
in the search for 2 missing Black Hawk County girls, 10-year-old Lyric Cook and her cousin, 8-year-old Elizabeth Collins.
We went out to the crops, just, looking at the ground, looking all around in the fields, turning up anything we can, anywhere we might think that they might have gone, any traces of anything, We didn't find anything.
Cook and Collins were last seen riding their bikes just after noon Friday. According to police, the girls' grandmother reported them missing after she hadn't seen or heard from them for nearly 2 hours. The bikes, authorities say, belonged to the 2 girls were found by an Evansdale firefighter on the southeast side of Myers Lake. Late last night, community members searched for the girls, but nothing turned up. By Saturday morning, this organized effort was formed. The search for Elizabeth Collins and Lyric Cook spanned 2 areas, dry land and then here on the water at Myers Lake. Search and rescue dive teams combed every end of the water. Then the decision came to drag the lake.
At 6:30 p.m., police and volunteers started searching the woods in the area. and the search ran until 3:30 a.m. the following day, which would be July 14th. So Drew would later talk to the media about the nightmare. Drew is Elizabeth's father. He said, "We were worried from the beginning. We would have never let Elizabeth go out on a bike like that. It was different for Lyric because she was a bit older, but Elizabeth was too little." He said the panic really started to set in when Elizabeth's purse was found. He said, "That was the moment when it hit me that something really wasn't right." So we kept on looking and looking, but we couldn't find them anywhere. I get what he's saying, because I mean, like, if it was just their bikes, maybe they dropped the bikes and like ran off somewhere with, like, she would keep her little purse with her, or even if the purse was maybe on the bike, but it was tossed to the side in a bush, which
Yeah,
does
I've
make it seem a little more suspicious.
read some articles that say it was in the bush, then another one said it was kind of like slung over like a post or a fence railing or something like that. So either way, it wasn't on the bike, but it was nearby, just depending on the
Yeah.
article as to exactly where it was found.
At 7 p.m. on the night that the girls vanished, the Iowa State Police airplane joined the search using infrared to try to locate them, and authorities also began interviewing sex offenders in the area. The FBI became involved in the case around 8 p.m., and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children began emailing and faxing photos and descriptions of the girls to truck stops, stores, and public places within a 100-mile radius of Evansdale. I feel like this is already a much better response, faster response than Libby and Abby got with Delphi. FBI agents arrived in Evansdale on July 14th at 7 a.m. with their child abduction response team, and that day volunteers continued searching until 7:30 p.m. The phones and computers of the parents of both girls were taken for investigation and examination, and cadaver dogs were taken to the lake on that day, and divers continued searching Myers Lake. Police also began looking at dumpsters and figuring out what locations they should be searching the landfill for. Over the coming days, the searches for the girls continued, and they searched Myers Lake until July 19th, and it seems like nothing else related to the case was ever found there. By Friday, July 20th, which would be 1 week after the girls vanished, focus of the investigation turned fully to an abduction, as all other causes had been eliminated, as in like an accident, things like that. According to the Cedar Rapids Gazette, that was published on July 25th, 2012, Dan, who's Lyric's father, was scheduled to appear in court for a pretrial conference, which was to cover 4 separate cases. In one of those cases, he was alleged to have assaulted Lyric's mother, Misty. By this point, the couple was estranged. The Gazette said other cases against Dan charged him with possession, dealing, and making methamphetamine, and he faced 235 years in prison if convicted. He was just released from prison in May 2012 after spending 6 months incarcerated. And some media reports said that Dan knew he was most likely going back to prison, so on the day before the girls vanished, he went to see Lyric. He said that she ran up to him and he hugged her. Same article by the Gazette indicated that Dan and Misty had taken multiple polygraph tests. And according to IowaColdCases.org, it says, at the same time, investigators said Dan and Misty were not considered suspects in the girls' disappearance and were looking into their backgrounds and of their associates only so as not to discount any possible leads. So a very wordy way to say they're probably not suspects, but maybe people connected to them could be, so we're looking into them too. According to an article from Sky News, Misty took 2 polygraph tests, and the first one was inconclusive, and apparently she passed the second one. Afterwards, she told the Associated Press, "It went well. They can rule me out of their book and move on to something else." A spokesperson for Elizabeth's parents said that they had been cooperating 300% with police ever since the girls disappeared. On Wednesday, December 5th, 2012, hunters came across 2 bodies in the Seven Bridges Wildlife Park in Bremer County. This area is around 25 miles from where the girls were last seen, and police were called to the site at 12:45 p.m. that day. The following day, Chief Deputy Rick Abbin held a press conference to announce that the police were confident that the bodies were those of Lyric and Elizabeth. He said there were no other missing persons cases in the area that matched the description of the remains, and he also said that the remains belonged to people of a smaller stature.
Today at approximately 12:45 p.m., law enforcement was notified by hunters that they had discovered 2 deceased bodies in a wooded area. The Cook and Collins family had been notified of this discovery. The bodies are being transported to the state medical examiner's office in Ankeny for positive identification. Lyric and Elizabeth were last seen on July 13th, 2012, on Friday at approximately 12:15 p.m. riding their bicycles in Evansdale. Their bicycles and a purse were found at Myers Lake here in Evansdale. Since that day, the investigation has been ongoing. Numerous agencies have been and are still involved in this case. They are being transported to the state medical examiner's office in Ankeny, and when the information is available to us, I will release to you what I am able to release. This is a difficult thing for us to go through. It's a difficult thing for the people of the community, not just the community of Evansdale, but also the whole community that all came together and showed their support for the family and also for law enforcement.
The remains were taken to the state medical examiner's office for further testing and positive identification. And on Monday, December 10th, 2012, the medical examiner confirmed that the remains belonged to the girls. To date, no other information has been released about the causes of death for the girls or the condition that the remains were found in. It's believed this has been withheld as it's the only information the killers would know, and it can help rule out any false confessions, which is something similar they do with, they do it with a lot of cases, but it was a big one with Delphi and Libby and Abby too, because people for so long were wondering like what happened to them, what were their causes of death, what was found at the crime scene, things that we wonder with Lyric and Elizabeth as well. Elizabeth's family held a memorial for her on December 13th, and Lyric's funeral was held on December 29th, 2012. Drew spoke about the time leading up to the discovery of the bodies. He said, "Those 5 months were unbearable. It's still unbearable now. It's all I live and breathe. You just never imagined something could happen in a small town like this. It's a safe area. You hear about these kinds of things happening, but nobody ever thinks it could happen to their family until it does." On February 6, 2013, it was announced that the trail and park at Myers Lake, where the girls were last seen, would be renamed as the Trail of Angels and Angels Park in honor of the girls. Jeff Dawson, who's the chairman of the Evansdale Parks Department, told KCRG, "We thought if you're riding your bike or walking, it's a nice way to memorialize people that you don't want to forget." The city of Evansdale also said that July 13th would be declared Lyric and Elizabeth Day. 6 months after the girls were found, authorities released some new information. They said 3 separate witnesses had come forward with information about a white older model SUV being in the area at the time. This vehicle was said to be similar to a Chevy Suburban or a Ford Bronco. The vehicle was seen parked on Arbutus Avenue on the day that the girls vanished. That street meets up with the bike trail where the bikes were eventually found. 2 of the witnesses said they'd seen the SUV parked between 2 bike trail signs, and the third witness said that they saw the vehicle parked near the woods, only a few hundred feet away from where the bikes would later be found. All 3 witness statements said that the vehicle was in the area between 11:30 and 12:30 p.m. that day. A spokesperson with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation said there are just a lot of reports, a lot of information to read through. Now there's a little bit of lull. We are able to start pouring through those reports and making those connections. 2 of the witnesses came forward during the initial investigation about the SUV before the girls were found. The third came forward later and said that they assumed that someone had already told police about the SUV. I feel like there's always like one person that's like, I just assumed you guys already knew.
I'm sure someone would have told you. So in 2013, police announced that they were looking into a possible connection between Lyric and Elizabeth's murders and the murder of a teenager named Kathleen Shepard. They said they were also looking into any other possible connections with other missing people and other murders that had happened in the state. Gerard Myers, who was the Assistant Director of Field Operations of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, very long title, spoke to the media and said, "Thankfully, we know for every county, every city, what unsolved missing persons cases they have. We want to look and see if there are any attributes from those cases that are consistent with this case." In terms of Kathleen's case, she was 15 when she was abducted in May 2013 in Dayton, Iowa. She was kidnapped along with her friend Desi Hughes, who was 12. The 2 had been walking, I guess, on their way home from school that day. A man named Michael James Klunder was the abductor. He was 42 years old at the time. He took the girls to a hog confinement lot where he worked, and he zip-tied them so they couldn't escape. Despite this, though, Desi managed to run away when Michael took Kathleen to another part of the property. Michael took his life later that day. I guess he thought, the jig was up. Desi was going to rat on him. She knew who he was or could lead them back to where it had all happened. So he took his life that very day. Kathleen's body was found on Friday, June 7th, 2013 in the Des Moines River. Her cause of death was multiple sharp and blunt force injuries and was certified as a homicide. An autopsy showed that the blunt force injuries were to her head. In terms of Michael's criminal history, he had served around 2 decades in prison from 1992 to 2011, so right before Lyric and Elizabeth were abducted, for previous kidnapping and assault charges. However, in May 2014, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation said that they were confident that Michael was no longer a person of interest in the Lyric and Elizabeth case. Despite this, he's still spoken about pretty much till this day as being a possible suspect in the case. I guess, they can't essentially 100% rule him out because no one has been arrested yet, but that was what they said in 2014. They were pretty confident that he wasn't related to the case.
I think I've since seen, I don't know how true it is because I just saw it like in passing in a comment, that they were able to verify from his cell phone data that he was most likely at work when this happened.
Yeah.
But again, it's like he could have left his cell phone at work and went and done it. So I guess it's not totally confirmation, but seems like he didn't do it.
So in September 2013, Dan, Lyric's father, was sentenced to up to 90 years in prison for the charges that we mentioned earlier. He has a mandatory minimum of 30 years to be served before he will be eligible for parole. As we mentioned, he had been facing 235 years, but he entered a plea deal, which meant that he would spend no more than 45 years behind bars. By July 2014, the reward for information in the case had reached $170,000. That is around $225,000 today, so a pretty hefty reward for the case. $150,000 of that had been raised privately. In August that year, 2014, the Evansdale police held a press conference and they gave some more information about what they believed the abductor was like, characteristics of the abductor. They said they believed the abductor was likely local to and familiar with the Evansdale area. And this information about the offender, what that was released at the time, this summary is from the Iowa Cold Cases website, which is linked on our blog. It says the offender is familiar with both Myers Lake Angels Park in Evansdale and the Seven Bridges Wildlife Area in Bremer County. The suspect chose Seven Bridges because he or she was familiar with the area and knew it was secluded. The offender blends in with and may be part of those communities. The suspect likely used quiet coercion to gain the girl's compliance into leaving Myers Lake using a ruse or threats of violence. The suspect may have been experiencing stress related to legal troubles, spousal problems, employment difficulties, financial strain, or mental health issues in July 2012. The suspect may avoid discussing the case or showing interest in the matter, but is likely following the developments in the media. They also said that the offender may have attempted to abduct children or adults in the past. And they believe that the suspect may have altered his or her physical appearance, such as changing hairstyle and facial hair, and the offender's vehicle may have been altered with a new paint job or reupholstery. They said analysts' experience with prior abduction cases point to there only being one person involved, but there have been some cases where more than one are involved, so they're kind of indicating could be two people. Sounds like it's probably one person, but maybe multiple people.
I feel like in things like that, they don't want to say indefinitely because then when they do, so you find out it's two people in trial, they'll be like, well, you said it was one person.
Yeah. So a few kind of interesting, not really anything, nothing really out of the ordinary or especially memorable that would make you realize that the person you knew was the offender, but some interesting points. Police held another press conference in February 2015. The Evansdale Chief of Police, Kent Smock, said they were focusing their efforts on anyone who may be familiar with the remote Bremer County woodland where the girls were found. He said, I think you will all agree with me that Seven Bridges is extremely remote. We have no doubt that the person or persons responsible for this crime are very familiar with Seven Bridges. A 2016 article indicated that tips were still coming in for the case. Drew, Elizabeth's father, said justice will be served. I do believe that. It just takes time to go through all the stuff and all the information. So this, 4 years after this happened, they're still getting tips. Probably not unexpected because it was a pretty high profile case, but just confirming that there was still some movement then.
I feel like even like this was after the fact, but Delphi probably reignited a lot of people looking at the case again and even more tips too. That was in 2017?
Yeah. In 2017, Mitch Mortvet, who was the head of field operations for the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, spoke about Misty and Dan, Lyric's parents, to the media. He said, I think people are confident in saying they don't have an active role. They didn't have an active role, sorry. However, that doesn't rule out anything coming in the future. Police also gave an update on the status of the case at that time. By July 2017, authorities had interviewed more than 1,000 people and looked into more than 300 sex offenders. They also said that they were looking into a new lead that involved a sex offender. That man is Jeff Altmaier. He was 58 at the time. He was trying to entice children by offering them $100 to get into his van. He was arrested and accused of trying to lure a 6-year-old girl into his car. The KWWL reported on July 12, 2017, that Jeff is suspected in 2 other incidents. So he has kind of a history of trying apparently to abduct young children, which Lyric and Elizabeth were. A police spokesperson was asked about a possible connection between Jeff Altmaier and Lyric and Elizabeth's case, and the response was, the most I would say is that he's one of our leads, and I will leave it at that. Yeah, so at that point, they hadn't ruled out Jeff. Mitch Morvat, who we mentioned before, said, it's very concerning to us. You have an individual like that has access that he does through his employment at the time to basically roam the state or roam the Midwest. So basically this guy had a large footprint, was known to have a predisposition to trying to abduct children, lure children into his car. Obviously, it would be ridiculous to not look at him in relation to the case.
Yeah.
So, as we mentioned, 2017 was also the year of the Delphi murders of Liberty German and Abigail Williams. There are some obvious similarities in the case. Both cases involved young girls. Libby and Abby were a little bit older, but they were abducted and murdered while out on trails in kind of recreational areas. Delphi and Evansdale are around 400 miles or a 6-hour drive apart, though, so not particularly close, but still, I guess, the same general Midwest vicinity. The Indiana State Police worked with Iowa investigators, but eventually said that despite similarities, there is no reason to believe the 2 cases are connected. I still feel like a lot of people don't necessarily believe that. There was a lot of question when Richard Allen was arrested if he could have been involved in Lyric and Elizabeth's cases. I feel like, essentially, personally, probably the only coincidence is that it involved 2 young females each case. That is probably where the link ends at this point.
Yeah, like there's some similarities, but I mean, I feel like a lot of cases where kids are abducted and murdered, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah,
It just,
exactly.
like there was just 2 of them. That's what makes it different.
And I guess the trail thing. But essentially, a trail is going to be an area where someone would look to abduct a child because it's probably a bit more remote, a bit more secluded. The child or children may be by themselves, riding bikes, walking. Like, I feel like it's more of an opportune thing than a specific place that they picked for that any other reason.
Yeah, I think another similarity that people were like really harping on was that their bodies were both found near water, but I don't think that's that crazy either.
So in July 2017, Misty, Lyric's mother, spoke to the media and revealed that she'd given birth to a daughter named Abigail. She said, after Lyric, I didn't think I would be willing to have any more kids, and God had other plans. We were really, really blessed to have her in my life. It's amazing. At that point, Misty had seemed to kind of turn her life around. As we mentioned, she'd been in jail for a lot of Lyric's early years. She was pregnant with Lyric when she was jailed, convicted. But at this point, she'd seemed to have turned her life around. This is an article from the media. It says she cares for baby chicks on a farm along with her boyfriend, Zach Fraser. The work is hard and the days are hot. They like to go camping and have fun as a family. Misty said, I'm living again and that's good, but it's tainted every day with a sadness and a loss, just something that's deeply missing from my life. She said, here I am, I'm living, I'm doing lots of things. I'm amazed every day how beautiful things are and how happy I can be and how much I enjoy my family and my home. I just wish that Lyric and Elizabeth were here to enjoy that with us. So Misty spoke to the media again in 2022 about legal issues. She basically indicated that she struggled with addiction. After Lyric died, she kind of turned to drugs and alcohol to numb the pain. She said, it was just really more than the mind or emotions can handle. I just wanted to numb my thoughts and my feelings, and I know from my past a very good way to do that. And so I just went right back to it and it worked. I did what I wanted to do for quite a while until I went to prison. So despite Misty being adamant a few years ago that she had turned her life around, in 2023, she was arrested on drug charges again. She and a man named Nathan Slaughter, who I have read in some articles or some comments was her partner. So she had broken up with Abigail's father, possibly, and was possibly with this man, Nathan Slaughter. They were both charged with possession of methamphetamine as a third offense, possession of marijuana as a third offense, gathering where controlled substances are used, methamphetamine, and possession of drug paraphernalia. All of the charges, except for the drug paraphernalia one, are Class D felonies. I can't find anything online about the outcome of these charges, if they've been sentenced, what's happening. Like, I feel like something should have happened, but there's nothing reported in the media online about what was the outcome of those charges and possible convictions.
Hmm.
In 2024, on the 12th anniversary of the girls being found, Drew spoke to the media. He said, "Whoever did this is a monster. They shouldn't be out. They don't deserve to breathe free air. I don't want them to do this to another family or another child. Every day I wake up with this. It doesn't go away. I will never stop until I find out who did this. They deserve justice. No matter what, the girls didn't deserve this. Whoever did this needs to pay." So there has been some kind of renewed media interest in the case because there's a new documentary come out on Max called Taken Together: Who Killed Lyric and Elizabeth. One of the episodes takes a focus on Michael Klunder. He was the one who he mentioned who abducted Kathleen and her friend Desi and killed himself basically when he realized he was going to be caught. According to the documentary, even though they said in 2014 he was likely not involved, he is still, according to the documentary, considered a person of interest in the murders of Lyric and Elizabeth. Drew, Elizabeth's father, takes a big part in the series. He also confronted someone who he believed may be a person of interest in the case, and that person is an associate of Michael Klunder. So they kind of do a bit of digging and look into other possible suspects. Drew said, "When I found out about him being friends with Klunder, I thought this has to be him, but police couldn't place Klunder at Evansdale at the time, so that's a problem. But it's interesting that you have another double abduction, and it's a guy that you were in prison with when you were best friends. It's a guy that you were in prison with that you were best friends with in prison, and you're here living 8 doors away. This guy's daughter used to ride the school bus with my daughter." Drew said, "I'm not 100% on him though. He's not top of my list. I have other people that are more interesting to me than that guy." So I guess, it is interesting in the Kathleen case. It was a double abduction. It was a failed one in the end because one of them managed to get away, but another similarity and the same area, which is an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
So Drew and Heather ended up divorcing in 2017. That's not uncommon. I feel like in a lot of cases where families suffer a trauma or a missing person, often the marriage doesn't survive. It's just too much. And that's basically what Drew said. He said that everything went to shit for us afterwards, including my marriage, which was even harder on the kids. After Elizabeth died, it was like a semi-truck drove through our house at 9 p.m. while everyone was sitting around watching TV. There was nothing that wasn't damaged. Everything was damaged after that. I'm really sick of waiting, Drew said. I want to know who this person is, and I want to see this person arrested. He also went on to say, "But I'm also scared to death because I've been wondering all this time what happened and who this person was. But when I wonder how hard it's going to be when I find out all the things I don't want to hear," which is what was done to them and what their last moments were like. So I wonder if the families even know, if he's saying what was done to them. Like, surely you would think the families would know the cause of death, but he's kind of indicating that they don't know a lot of details.
I feel like they don't, because remember, even I'm always like bringing up Delphi. They didn't know anything. Like they said, they didn't know anything at all.
He said, "The hard part ain't over yet. Finding out the answers to all of those questions might be the hardest part of all. You don't want to think of somebody hurting your child, but obviously they were hurt. And when those answers come, they're going to be hard to hear. But at the same time, I need to know." So despite their divorce, Drew and Heather still seem to be amicable, and they have established the Elizabeth Collins Foundation together. The Elizabeth Collins Foundation is a non-profit organisation and operates exclusively for education and charitable purposes, and will work towards enriching community safety in the areas of sex trafficking and abduction. So it goes on to list other things that they do, things like they provide funding and information to help assist in solving cold cases. They provide community education on safety and prevention to stop people from being victims of crime. They provide preventative education on abduction, sex abuse, and trafficking. So they do a lot of things. They also maintain the Angels Park that was renamed after the girls. I had a look at the website. It hasn't been updated, I don't think, for a year or so. It still seems active. Like the foundation is still going, but I guess the momentum in the case after all this amount of time is slowing down, which is understandable. But they do have some media articles linked on there, like things when the girls' bodies were found, the searches for the girls. So if you want to check it out, the foundation website is linked on the blog.
Mm-hmm.
That is it up to date in terms of Lyric and Elizabeth's case, chronologically up to January 2025. As we mentioned, 14 years later, the case is still unsolved. There have been no arrests, very few persons of interest even named. There's a lot of speculation still online to this day. The people that we have mentioned, Michael Klunder and Jeff Altmaier, are ones that have been named by police and by the media. There is a lot of discussion online on sites like Reddit. There is one I found interesting. I won't name the person because he doesn't appear to have been named by police. We'll just call him T. This is a comment that I found online. It says that his employees were the people to find the bodies of the girls. He claimed that God told them to search there while hunting, and that was apparently the statement he gave to the FBI. He lived a mile away from the Seven Bridges entrance. He also apparently drove a white SUV. Some reports say he may have been the person to discover the bikes of the girls on the day they went missing. This is a direct comment from Reddit, so obviously we can't verify it, but I just wanted to share it because I found it interesting. It says, he parked on Arbutus Avenue in his work vehicle. He rode his bike down trails and, quote, found the bikes. The hunters who found them in the spot where T used to fish were sent them by him specifically. He's friends with Kent Smock, the old sheriff, and he assisted as a witness to derail the investigation towards him. His family defends him on social media because they know he's guilty. He's the lead suspect and no one can show me difference. This is obviously one person's point of view, but interesting that they mentioned Kent Smock, who was the old police chief. We mentioned him earlier in the episode. He was the police chief for part of the investigation into Lyric and Elizabeth's death, and he was fired in April 2015. This is some information about why he was fired. It says, according to the documents, 7 officers signed a complaint about his behaviour, saying he lacked honesty, integrity, and respect for police employees of the city of Evansdale. They also accused him of an inappropriate relationship with an unnamed person and interactions that left employees fearful of violence. So I just wanted to include that out of all, like, 'cause there's hundreds and hundreds of pages of speculation about this online. I just picked that one out because I found it kind of interesting, maybe a little bit of verifiable information about the police chief. We know he was fired. There's never been any information released officially as to, exactly why he was fired, just that kind of vague, ambiguous statement about his apparent conduct.
Yeah, I'd love to know the gossip, but
So in terms of theories in regards to the case, one that is discussed a lot is that the girls were killed as retribution for something that Dan and or Misty did in terms of drugs. Another theory is that this was a totally random white abduction. Another theory is that this was a totally random abduction, perhaps by the person driving the white SUV. We don't know who that is. Michael Klunder, his name's been thrown around, Jeff Altmaier. I guess other theories, like the families are involved for whatever reason, that Misty and Dan were involved. I feel like this is probably going to be a random abduction by some the white SUV does seem to probably be related. I don't feel like it's retribution for anything that the families have done. I feel like it was probably a sex offender or someone who was in the area and just took advantage
crime of opportunity.
Absolutely. And saw 2 little girls out riding their bikes and took the opportunity to abduct and murder them. I don't like Michael Klunder, maybe Jeff Altmaier, maybe. I don't really have a thought on if it is either of those men. It very well could be. I just feel like it was someone who took the chance when he saw the girls based on just random opportunity.
Yeah, based off of nothing but just like my instinct is like, I bet it's none of these people named or mentioned.
Well, now
I feel like it's
Delphi,
just a random.
We know that it can absolutely be that. Yeah.
But I just have a feeling it was just like a crime of opportunity. Someone saw these 2 girls and did what they did. It reminds me also of it was like a big case at the time, but just didn't last very long, and I feel like a lot of people moved on and forgot about it. But since it was close to me, I randomly think about it, was that case of Charlotte Senna from New York in, I think, 2023. She was out at a campground. She was riding bikes with her cousins, and she went and was like, I'm going to do 1 extra lap by herself, and ended up getting abducted by some random man who just saw her riding her bike, had no connection to anything. And I don't even think it's just off like of memory. I don't think he really had any relevant history. I feel like maybe they said he could have sexually assaulted someone, but it's not like he was arrested for abducting children or anything like that in the past. He was just like some random dude who saw her, abducted her. I'm pretty sure he sadly sexually assaulted her, but police did rescue her and find her alive, which is amazing. But it just reminds me of something like that. Someone just probably had a not well thought out plan and has
A
just gotten
compulsion.
lucky, I guess, this far.
Yeah. For someone
But
to
that's what I
be
lean towards.
for someone to abduct and murder two little girls, obviously there's a lot going on with that person. So it makes sense to me that they literally just saw them and thought, I'm going to do this. I've always wanted to, whatever, acted on a compulsion. And it was just a random crime of opportunity. Like, no one could have known that the girls were going to be there. They went on a random bike ride after asking their grandmother. It's not like this had been planned for days. And like with Libby and Abby, I know we spoke differently. They had Snapchatted that they were on the bridge and all that. Like, so people kind of knew where they were. And we've always spoken about maybe they were catfished there. I don't feel like that happened in this case. I feel like they literally just went out to ride their bikes. Someone saw them and grabbed them.
Same. I bet the white SUV is connected.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like that's too much of a coincidence for three people and then for no one to have come forward. Like, either they could say, oh yeah, I was
Yeah.
just eating my lunch in the car and yeah, I sat there. Like, no
Yeah.
one's come forward to say, yep, that was me. And I feel like that's kind of a red flag indicator as well.
Yeah, agreed. Unfortunately, there's tons of white SUVs in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like white is probably the most popular car color nowadays anyways.
If it does end up being a crime of opportunity, such a brazen crime, middle of the day, middle of summer, seems like it was probably a nice enough day that people were out and about, kids were on summer break, that I wonder, like, obviously when they said quite coercion, like obviously he could have had a gun and said get in the car or else,
And I feel like he had to have lured them into the car somehow because otherwise people probably would have heard them. Like you said, it's the middle of the day in like a semi-popular area. Granted, like middle of the day where a lot of adults would maybe at work, but kids were off from school. There's people around. He had to have gotten them somewhere where they wouldn't be heard. Maybe, like, I think in the other case we were talking about with the girl who escaped, Desi and Kathleen, the guy asked if they wanted to make money mowing yards or something. They're like, well, we have to ask our parents. And he was like, oh, here, I'll drive you over so you could ask your parents. And then that's how he got them in the car. So sadly, the girls could have been tricked into going over to the car, like leaving their bikes, and either you snatch them into the car or somehow convince them to get in the car. Maybe it was the one that you hear of like, oh, I have some puppies. I have some
yeah,
candies.
come and have a
Like,
look. And like, it must have been something that they would leave the bikes. Yeah, like, yeah, just quick, come and have a look at this. Or I found a puppy and a mother and puppies down the road. Can you come and help me? You just leave your bikes. I'll bring you
yeah.
back. Something like that. So
Yeah, it's sad how like innocent kids are to be like, yeah, we'll come help.
yeah, and 8 is so little. Like, I know Libby and Abby were teenagers, but 8 is still so, and obviously 10 is also, but an 8-year-old, it's just horrible.
Sad story. Hopefully there'll be resolution one day. I have hopes. I mean, I thought Delphi would never be solved. Still not certain we know exactly everything happened, but hopefully
Yeah.
one day there'll be resolution. We don't even know, like they could have DNA from the scene. We don't know
Yeah.
anything about the crime scene, which is crazy too.
I guess even when you think about that Asher Degree case that we covered, I think she's been missing for 25 years and there's just been some developments. So there's always hope, and especially with technology and DNA advancements and things like that. With them not releasing the cause of death, I wonder if it's something quite unusual. Like, obviously, because if they were shot or if they were strangled, or stabbed, they're probably the three main things that you would think would happen, and that anyone could confess to those things anyway. So I wonder if that is something that's quite unusual that they're holding back.
Yeah, maybe. Or just like specifically what it seems like they were killed with. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully there'll be a resolution one day, but that is all there is for now.
Yes.
So that's it for this episode. Like always, everything will be on the blog at truecrimesocietyblog.com if you want to read more about the case or see the sources that we use for our information. Make sure you're following us on Instagram. We're always posting updates on cases there.
If you have any updates on Misty too, if you can find out anything about her sentence, it's hard for me sometimes because I'm geo-blocked because I'm in Australia. I find a lot of US government websites I can't access, or I have to use the VPN, and even then it doesn't work properly. So if you do know if anything's happened to Misty after the 2023 drug charges, let us know. I'd like to know what she's up to.
That's funny. They don't even let you look. They're like, get out of here, Australian.
How dare you want to look at my court records?
No being nosy here. So yeah, follow us on Instagram if you want to follow our personal accounts. Mine's Steph_, Olivia's TCS Olivia. If you want to see what we're up to, check us out on Patreon. We do all the episodes ad-free on there, and we also do weekly bonus episodes, so you'd get 2 episodes without ads a week. And we also put the main episode out a day earlier, so it's an earlier release. Plus, Patreon is kind of like its own community. We have some chats on there to talk about what's going on. Like with the Delphi trial, we had a whole separate chat to just talk about that. I'm sure we'll do a similar thing for Brian Koberger and any of the other big trials coming up this year. So check us out there on Patreon and all the other usual stuff. If you could share the podcast with some pals, post on your Instagram stories, help us get the word out. That's all greatly appreciated. And leave us some nice comments. Don't say fuck you and your cats to me because it's already been done.
There's been some good discussion, even on older episodes. I find it interesting, and then when I can tell people are going back and listening to the older ones because they'll have interesting comments that we haven't maybe thought of or discussed. So we really enjoy reading them. Make sure you keep commenting, please.
Yeah, don't comment rudeness, please. So yeah, all those things, and that is it. So thank you guys for listening. Stay safe out there. Peace out.
Yeah.